Before listen, lock your door.
Subscribe for daily horror story.
First story.
My grandfather once told me, if a cabin still has light in the attic, but no one lives there, don't go near it. I used to laugh at that, thought it was just one of his creepy mountain sayings to keep kids from wandering too far. But, last fall, I found out exactly why he meant it. I was driving alone through a remote stretch of West Virginia dense forest on both sides. No cell signal for over an hour, and the kind of silence that starts to press in on you. My car had been acting up all morning, and just as the sun dipped below the ridge, the engine overheated. Steam billowed up from under the hood. No other cars, no towns on the GPS. I was stranded. That's when I saw it. Tucked into the trees just off a narrow gravel pull-off was a small, weathered cabin, the kind that looks like it's been there 100 years. Its wood was gray and soft with age, the metal roof rusted to a deep red brown, and the stone chimney crooked like it was sagging under some invisible weight. But what caught me was the window, a loft window high above, glowing faintly yellow, like someone had left a lantern burning inside. It was the only sign of life I'd seen in hours. I figured maybe someone lived there, or at least kept it as a hunting camp. Maybe they'd let me use their phone, or point me to help. I parked and walked up, crunching leaves under my boots. The air was still. No wind, no crickets. I knocked on the door. No answer, but the door creaked open slightly under my hand, and warm, damp air rolled out thick with dust and something else I couldn't place. Something sweet, like rotting fruit, left too long in a cellar. I called out, waited, then stepped inside. It was like time had stopped in their cobwebs, draped the corners, and dust blanketed every surface untouched for years, maybe decades. But one thing stood out. The stairs leading up to the loft. Spotless. No dust. No cobwebs. Just clean, freshly used wood. Something about that detail made my chest tighten. I backed out of the cabin without a second thought and walked straight back to my car. Whatever was going on in that place, I wanted no part of it. I decided to sleep in my car, off the side of the road, and wait for daylight. But when I returned the next morning, just to make sure I hadn't imagined something had changed. The cabin looked darker. I don't just mean unlit, I mean wrong. The windows were pitch black. The front door was shut and locked tight. And the loft window, the one that had glowed the night before, was completely dark. No glass, just an empty frame. But here's the part that broke my sense of reality. There were no stairs where the loft stairs had been. There was now only an unbroken ceiling. No railing, no hatch, nothing. Like the upper floor had never existed. I started to feel dizzy, like I was standing in two versions of the same place, and something had slipped between them. Still trying to convince myself I wasn't losing it, I circled around back to see if maybe I'd missed something. That's when I saw them. Footprints. 2 sets. Mine and another, bigger, barefoot, leading out of the tree line and stopping right at the back wall of the cabin. But the worst part, they were fresh. Pressed deep into the mud, still damp, and they hadn't been there yesterday. I bolted that night. I parked my car several miles down the road in a clearing, just far enough to put distance between me and that place. I left the doors locked, reclined my seat, and tried to sleep. But sometime after 1 a.m., I woke up to something strange. My car was glowing. A soft yellow light filtered in through the windshield, warm and familiar. I blinked, confused, then sat up slowly, and my heart stopped. Floating above the trees, maybe 15 feet off the ground, was the loft window. The exact same one from the cabin. Same frame, same shape, hanging in midair, like it had been ripped out and suspended in the dark, and behind it something moved. A shape, slow and steady. Then 3 dull, heavy knocks pounded from inside the floating window. 1, 2, 3. Each thud echoed through the woods. like it was knocking on the night itself. I don't remember turning the key. I don't remember driving away, but I did. I drove until sunrise, and I didn't stop until I was out of those mountains. I never told anyone until now, but sometimes, when the world is still and quiet, I swear I hear it again, that knocking, 3 times, always from above me. Next time you see light where there shouldn't be any, don't go near it, because not all lights are trying to help you find your way. Some are waiting for you to come close, so they can follow you home.
Second story.
My uncle once warned me, if you ever stay at a cabin and something's already smiling at you, leave before dark. I didn't listen, and now I'm certain something followed me home. Last October, I booked a solo trip to a remote hunting cabin in the Appalachian mountains. It was about 30 miles from the nearest paved road, tucked high in the woods at over 3,000 feet elevation. The ad called it perfect for disconnecting. That meant no Wi-Fi, no phone signal, no electricity, and no neighbors within miles. Exactly what I was looking for, so I thought. The first day felt like heaven. The air was crisp and still. Yellow leaves rustled gently in the wind, and I could hear birds calling from somewhere deep in the trees. The cabin was small, just one main room, with a wood stove and a sleeping loft you reached by a creaky wooden ladder. There was no electricity, only a few oil lamps and the battery lantern I brought with me. It felt rustic, peaceful, almost like stepping out of time, but something felt off. When I set down my backpack on the counter, I noticed a scrap of paper tucked beneath a coffee mug. The handwriting was faint, written in what looked like old pencil. Don't look up after midnight. No name, no date, just that one line. I figured it was a prank, maybe a leftover joke from the last visitor. But that night, lying in my sleeping bag with the lantern off, I started to feel uneasy. I stared up at the rafters above me and realized the beams weren't empty. There were shapes in the darkness, patches of black, too solid to be shadows. My eyes played tricks, I told myself, just tricks. Around 2 a.m., I woke up needing to pee. I climbed down the ladder carefully, the floor cold against my feet, and lit my lantern. The air inside felt strangely heavy, almost oily. I stepped outside, took care of business, and as I turned back toward the cabin, I froze. Something was looking at me. From the loft window, the same loft where I had just been sleeping, I saw a pale, stretched-out face pressed against the glass. Its mouth was too wide, frozen in a grin that didn't move. It didn't blink. It didn't breathe. Just watched me with eyes that were far too human, and not human at all. I bolted inside, lantern shaking in my hand, and pointed the light up toward the loft. Nothing. I climbed up, checked every corner of the small space, searched under my blanket, even opened the window. It was latched shut. No footprints in the dust. No sign that anyone nor anything had been there. I convinced myself it was exhaustion. Maybe I was half asleep, seeing things, but that didn't explain what kept happening. The second night, at exactly 2:30 a.m., I heard a long, slow creak from above, meal-like weights shifting on the rafters. A moment later, small pebbles began to fall from the ceiling, tapping against the wooden floor, one by one. Tap, tap, tap. I turned on the lantern, shined it straight up. Nothing, but I could feel it. Something was there. By the third night, I was barely sleeping. I kept the lantern burning as long as the batteries lasted, staring up at the beams. The silence became unbearable. It wasn't peaceful anymore. It was watching me, holding its breath. Then came the final night. The temperature dropped sharply, and I could see my breath inside the cabin. My lantern flickered, even with a fresh battery. And just as I started to drift off from sheer exhaustion, I heard it, a wheezing, rattling breath from directly above me. Then, a voice, dry and cold. Just 2 words, look up. I didn't. I grabbed my boots in one hand, my keys in the other, and ran barefoot out of the cabin. I didn't stop until I reached my truck, parked half a mile down the logging road. I locked the doors, curled up in the passenger seat, and stayed that way shrewing wide until dawn. I never filed a complaint, never left a review. I didn't want anyone asking questions I couldn't answer. But 2 nights after I got home, something happened again. I was brushing my teeth when I heard a creaking sound from the attic above me. I froze. I live alone. The attic door was shut, still is. That was 8 months ago. And every night since, at exactly 2:30, I hear a small creak above my bedroom. Sometimes, I find dust on the floor near the vent. Once, I swear I saw a shadow move across the ceiling while I was lying in bed. Next time you rent a cabin that feels too quiet, leave. And whatever you do, don't look up. Because if you see it, it already knows where to find you. And once it smiles at you, it never forgets your face.
Third story.
My grandfather used to say, in these mountains, not all cabins were built to keep things out. Some were built to keep something in. I always brushed it off as one of his dramatic old mountain sayings. Until last fall, when I spent a night alone in one of those cabins. I'd been section hiking the Appalachian trail for over 3 years, chipping away at it during long weekends, school breaks, and any chance I could get away. By October, I had reached the deeper, lonelier stretches near Damascus, Virginia, where the forests grow darker and quieter the deeper you go. It was there I met another hiker at a trailhead, an older guy who seemed like he'd lived out here half his life. He told me about a cabin cheap, off-grid, tucked behind an old logging road. No power, no plumbing, but dry, safe, and only $20 a night. He scribbled a number on the back of a gas station receipt and said, "The guy don't ask questions. Just leave the money under the mat. Key's always in the door." I should have listened to the knot forming in my stomach, but it had been raining hard all afternoon, and I was soaked, sore, and desperate to sleep somewhere that wasn't made of nylon and mud. So I called. A gravel-thick voice answered. No name, no pleasantries, just cash under the mat, keys in the door. Click. The road to the cabin was barely a road anymore, more like 2 muddy tire ruts swallowed by overgrowth. When I got there, I could see the place had been standing for decades. The wood siding was gray and warped. Moss curled around the edges of the roof. Windows smeared with dirt reflected nothing. The door creaked open like it hadn't moved in years. Inside, the air was thick with mildew. The walls were stained yellow and brown, and the wood floor felt soft under my boots, like it had absorbed one too many floods. But there was a cot, a tiny fireplace, a roof that didn't leak. At that point it felt like luxury. That night, I ate a can of chili by the fire and tried to dry out my socks. The wind outside died down, and the forest settled into a heavy silence. I fell asleep to the soft crackle of burning wood until something woke me. A sound faint but sharp, a tapping, slow, rhythmic, not random, not outside, from inside one of the walls. I sat up fast, suddenly freezing despite the fire's dying glow. It didn't sound like mice. It wasn't scratching or scurrying. It was deliberate, measured, like something was knocking from inside the wall. Tap, tap, pause, tap, tap, tap. It almost felt like code. I grabbed my flashlight and swept it across the walls. That's when I noticed something odd. The back wall, near the fireplace, looked newer than the rest of the cabin. The planks were cleaner, straighter, lighter in color, and they didn't align perfectly with the original wall. It was recessed, like someone had built a false panel. I stepped closer and pressed my palm against it. It sounded hollow. I knocked, and something knocked back 3 times, right where my hand had been. I jumped back, heart slamming against my ribs. I locked the door even though I knew it wouldn't matter. Every fiber in my body screamed leave, but I forced myself to stand still, to listen. Maybe it was an animal. Maybe I was imagining things. Then came the voice, raspy, thin, like breath scraping through dry leaves. "You shouldn't be here." The words came from inside the wall. I grabbed my pack, didn't bother lacing my boots. I burst out into the freezing dark, stumbling through the wet brush until I hit the trail. I didn't stop for over an hour. That night, I pitched my tarp in the rain, miles away. I didn't care. I slept in the mud with one eye open. I never went back. But I couldn't let it go either. A few weeks later, I started digging around online, searching maps, forums, old trail reports. Eventually, I found a reference to a man who once lived up on that ridge, a hermit who vanished in the late 90s. Locals said he'd gone mad, built hidden rooms inside his house, talked to people no one else could see. When the cabin was finally found, it had been abandoned except for the inside of the walls, which were clawed from the inside. That description matched everything. The warped shape, the partition, the location. I still have that phone number saved somewhere, but I've never dialed it again. And sometimes, late at night on solo hikes, I swear I hear something faint tapping, far off, behind trees, or maybe underfoot, like it remembers me, like it's still waiting. So next time someone tells you, a cabin is cheap, safe, and just off the trail, ask why no one's staying there. Some walls were never meant to be knocked on, and some things were never meant to be let out.